I think it is a reserve drug. For me, definitely it's a reserve drug. It is not going to be my first line of treatment ever, because you get excellent response to mupirocin if you use it correctly the way ma'am told. And adding on to the way ma'am talked about cleansing, which is very, very effective. Ma'am, I also land up using dilute potassium permanganate compresses a lot.
Yeah, if your patient is smart enough to know the difference between pink, different shades of pink.
True.
Yellow.
I agree. Yeah. So
Only
that
then.
is also something which works excellently well. I think ozenoxacin is a reserve drug for me, for sure. I'm not going to be using it in the first case of, impetigo contagious IC, because mupirocin works excellently well even now. So
precisely, and as ma'am mentioned, 80% of our infections are caused by methicillin sensitive SA and cephalogy. Ozenoxacin as a first line as of now. Let's reserve it for when mupirocin gets, becomes resistant. Dr. Ravindra, I hope I can hear you now. I'm now going to bring you on. How would you approach this case? Sir, there is some issue with your audio. Bharat, can you just call up sir and check with his audio?
Yeah, just a moment, sir. I will do it immediately. Just a moment.
Yes,
I'll try to figure it out. Yeah.
So, Sameepa, the musical chairs comes to you, passing the parcel. Please tell us how you will manage. Archana has already said this is a simple case where topicals would suffice. Is there any chance you would go for an oral agent for this particular patient?
I think I would go for an oral in this particular patient, because what I see on the cheek is there are multiple lesions which are linearly arranged, and there is a surrounding inflammation that has happened. I would obviously palpate the patient to check, if there is an induration as well over there.
Correct.
Plus, I see a very active pustule on the nose as well. And as we all know that this, this sort of encompasses a dangerous area of the face, I would prefer giving oral antibiotic along.
Diagnosis. I will refer for derma.
Oh, great.
Great, sir. That was what I was getting at, sir. Archana ma'am, how would you manage this case? And please tell the audience what this is.
So this is like hypopion, what you see in both the lesions, and it is very flaccid. It is got, so it is bullous impetigo, and this is also bullous impetigo, but it is got iriseveral antibiotic. Amoxiclav is my favorite because I don't want to go beyond that. It works in sensitive Staph aureus and streptopyogenes also, which is group A, B, except in SCPD, which is a disease of 7th or 8th decade.
Yes, I have it filled with pus. That should be a marker for you. What is more important and more commonly seen, and I'm sure Dr. Ravindra will agree with me, are secondary pyodermas, where you have a different disorder. And on top of that, as a collateral, there is impetiginization or bacterial infection. So, do you see a lot of infected scabies, you mentioned atopic dermatitis, sir. I'm sure a lot of those patients come with infected fissuring. And, if you've seen malaria patients or patients with prickly heat getting secondarily infected, what is your take on this? How do you think we should manage this?
Like scabies with secondary infection is very common for us.
Yes.
Having a scabies, they will present as an infection. But we are trying to find out whether it is primary disease of scabies or not. So first, in that case, what I do, I treat first infection and then I treat for scabies.
Perfect, sir. I think that is the perfect thing. Sameepa, any where you would differ? In fact, my next slide is infected scabies, so you can see that.
No, I think I agree. I agree with that, with the approach. First, we treat the infection and then we treat the scabies.
True. So I think that is unanimous. Whenever you have a secondary pyoderma, always treat the primary disease. Always treat the infection first, and then look for the primary disorder. Archana ma'am, this is very, very commonly seen in patients who present to us with malaria or prickly heat. Can you tell us what this is and how to manage?
So this is periporitis, means this is intra epidermal part of the sweat gland which gets infected, and they're very painful. The child is very irritable and maybe slight feverish and not feeling well, kind of lethargic. So this is different from plain simple malaria rubra. So this is infected. Again, Staph aureus is the culprit, and you should treat it with antibiotics, systemic antibiotics. As a very important point, since we live in North India, is that one should stop applying oil, or even I'm not too fond of calamine lotion because that rather blocks the sweat ducts, and most of the people are in habit of applying it. And when they apply talcum powder, it should be applied on a very dry skin rather than on a very wet skin, so it doesn't form a cake and occlude the sweat ducts again. So that's important.
Yeah, here comes pediatrician, because we are getting the newborn babies, and I have printed prescriptions within this having advice not to put any type of oil for few days, or at least mustard should be absolutely, because in North India, granny nannies are fond of. And today one parents were asking how many times we can give massage to baby. I told very funnily, if your granny, that means grandmother and either side, are free, they can give many times, because they don't have any work, they will do it in spite of So usually I avoid them to put mustard in basically, or any type of oil. They will come in spite of not putting any oil. The baby for a few days they will come with pustular assays or any type of blocked sweat glands or whatever. So, and now my question is like TN, we are getting Toxicum erythema neonatum, what I guess.
ETN.
That can be a TN. That can be infected. That can be benign condition also. They are very common for us. For first few days of life, or after 10 days of life, either secondary infected or primary benign condition.
So I'm happy you brought that out. In fact, I was discussing this with ma'am yesterday as well. So ETN versus, Sameepa, would you want to take up that question actually? Erythema toxicum neonatorum versus transient neonatal melanotic pustulosis. Very common physiological changes in the newborn. Anything to worry about? When to refer to a dermatologist and what to do? How to counsel patients? Because it looks very, very explosive, the rash.
Okay. So whenever we are talking of erythema toxicum neonatorum, we all know both transient pustular melanosis as well as ETN. Both of them are benign physiological conditions of the child. It is going to resolve in maximum 2 to 3 weeks time. All that is required during the entire course is just reassurance to the parents. Now, how do we diagnose or differentiate between the two? Erythema toxicum neonatorum, you will have a base erythema with tiny pinpoint pustules or papules sitting on top of it, scattered all over the body. Okay, it can be anywhere on the body. The child is going to be absolutely well. There is not going to be any systematized symptoms of any sort whatsoever. All right. When it comes to transient pustular melanosis, we will always land up seeing a pigmentation which is left behind. Whereas in ETN, when it is resolving, they are very fragile pustules. So they are going to rupture in about a day or two's time. And that particular pustule in ETN is not going to leave any mark. The erythema also disappears. But in transient pustular melanosis, there will be a pigmentation left. And then again, there can be a gram stain done, which will show neutrophils in one and which is going to show eosinophils in one. So you will be able to differentiate between the two. When it comes to counseling the patient, I always tell the patient that these are normal conditions which happen, and generally in 7 to 14 days time, it is going to resolve. What I tell them during this particular time is I just explain the routine skincare regimen to the patient. I do not land up using any kind of topical antibiotic or calamine lotion for these patients at all. I have seen a lot of patients being given topical mupirocin or fusidic acid, but it is actually not really required at all. So that's how I differentiate, and that is how we counsel our patients.
Totally agreed. Yes.
So I hope, Dr. Ravindra, your question was answered well.
Yes, I do.
I think the counseling part is important, that your child is feeding normally.
Absolutely.
See, for a neonate, like I think feeding is the most important thing that represent, whether the child is sick or not.
Yeah. Again, here I will come in because most of the pediatrician, maybe including me, don't have much idea. So what the Dr. Sameepa was telling, they are prescribing antibiotics or topical antibiotics. That should not be done. If the pediatrician are clear about themselves and they know the case, they should not advise. So they should be clear for themselves rather than blaming the parents. And then comes the part of counseling. If they trust you, like they trust pediatrician, they will believe. They will not do anything. They will even avoid massaging for 1 month. What I do, mustard, I will absolutely scare them not to use, they will not use. So pediatricians should be clear about themselves. What is the diagnosis? Because I know, truly speaking, most of my colleagues don't have the clear-cut ideas. What is this TEN? They will think this is sepsis. They will admit the patient inside an
Yeah,
ICU.
I've seen
Yeah,
that.
it's happened. It's happened with us as well.
I sent them back home, but sorry to say, many pediatricians will admit the baby thinking themselves, oh, this is a case of sepsis. Maybe they will lead to, because the color is very, golden color.
Yeah, and very bright red
Bright
is
red.
there.
Yes,
That is a
yes,
sweat
And
gland
that's why it's called toxic erythema.
correct.
Absolutely. So that can have varied presentation from mild redness, pinpoint redness, to the pustular presentation, absolutely pus filled,
Yeah.
So that is, so pediatricians should be clear about themselves, and then they should proceed like that.
So wonderful. So in fact, I remembered my HOD used to tell us erythema toxicum neonatum. The only thing true about the disease is that it occurs in neonates. The toxicity is not there, and the erythema lasts only for 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
So I think that should be a good. Archana ma'am, I'm going to bring you back in. These cases, ma'am, herpetic Whitlow and gingival stomatitis, not very commonly seen by us, but I don't get referrals by anybody for these cases. So what do you
Yeah,
think is
we
happening
get
to
pretty
them?
often from our fellow colleagues because, herpetic gingival stomatitis, we always tell during undergrad, whosoever comes, like these days they come more often. Herpetic Whitlow is very troublesome. Initially the first episode, the child may be sick and, not lifting the arm because there is regional lymphadenopathy. And then it happens, especially in school going children, when they start using the pencil and it's traumatizing. So it's very important. And thumb sucking also predisposes to herpetic Whitlow, again, because of the trauma. Right. So this is very important. And it has to be treated with systemic acyclovir. Episodic treatment, but once even I gave my son, I remember for 8 months, I gave acyclovir because he developed every 3 or 4 weeks, he will develop this. And we had to keep the acyclovir tablet in our car, also in everyone's bag, wallet, so that, anywhere we are, we can immediately start on acyclovir. Herpetic gingival stomatitis, especially following high-grade fever or any systemic illness, and they generally feel that it is they fail to make a diagnosis because it rapidly gets secondary colonized by Candida.
True.
But again, it is very painful, and the child is literally drooling the saliva. I think that is a very important point, that it's painful. He's not accepting any food except the milk by bottle fed. So what I tell them, if the child is more than 2 to 3 years and can suck, straw feeding is very important. For you can make dalia or custard powder, custard which is very thin and can be eaten with straw. And again, systemic acyclovir is very important, and sometimes you have to add anti-Candida like fluconazole for these patients.
So thank you, ma'am. I think a lot of good, information there on how to treat.
And one thing more I forgot to tell, like generally we say unilateral about herpes,
Yes.
but herpetic gingival stomatitis, it's both sides, it's gingiva. Gingiva is most often involved. So you should just, see the gingiva part, and it's bilaterally symmetrical in majority.
So gum examination should not be missed. I think that is another very, very important point. Drooling, pain, and obviously ulcers, which you can very well appreciate in the photograph. So I'm going to bring in Dr. Ravindra. Now this you are definitely seeing in your OPDs. Multiple vesicles on the hands, feet, and the mouth.
I think this is scabies.
Sir, I would have agreed with you. Scabies does come in a vesicle or bullous form, especially on the palms and soles in children. But these are vesicles on the palms, the hand, the foot, and the mouth.
So hand, foot, mouth disease.
Yes, sir. Yes. But sir, how commonly are you this? So this happens in an episodic manner in not only Mumbai, but I'm sure all across India. We see it only as
only in Gulf itself, not in India.
Oh, not in India, sir.
No, not
That's very strange.
We see
very
it
common,
like
sir.
it comes
Very
in clusters.
Yes,
It comes in clusters. We'll see 10 patients in a week,
Together.
and then we will not see any. Like usually in February, March, and
Yes.
October, November,
Maybe
which
Spring
is
and autumn is the season where we see it. Exactly.
and you know,
So-
fever may be mild to very, very severe, which
Hmm.
is it last for a week.
Hmm.
Correct. And why I showed this photograph was if anybody's interested, the pattern of the
Yeah,
vesicles or the bulla that
erythema.
comes, it's a
The
rugby
rim
ball
of
shape.
erythema.